Part 1 of your semester review for the fall of 2019. The first little bit is going to be going back to your first couple of chapters when we were dealing with operations with functions. This first one is going to be dealing with absolute value. The number after the W tells you what's being plugged into the equation to replace your variable. And so in this case, we have negative the absolute value of 7 plus 3 minus 2. And so we have to first find out what is my number inside the absolute value. What is it when I combine 7 and 3? And that is 10. Well, I need to take the absolute value of that 10. And the absolute value of that 10 is going to be 10. And everything else just gets brought down from the previous line. Now that I've gotten the absolute value gone away with, I can actually find out what this number is. That number, negative 10 minus 2, is negative 12. That's my answer. So when we look at this next one, this time I'm plugging in a 3 into my n. So negative 3 times 3 squared minus 4. So I need to square that 3 first. So negative 3 times 3 squared is 9 minus 4. Now I need to do my operations multiplied by 3. So that's going to be negative 27 minus 4. And that gives me a negative 31. That's my answer. On this next one, I'm plugging in a negative 3 into my variable. And be careful in this, that when you plug it in parentheses, and that when you use your calculator to find out negative 3 squared is, you're doing negative 3 times negative 3. Make sure you put that in parentheses. And so 2 times 9 plus 2. So 18 plus 2 is 20. That's my answer. This next one, we're actually going to plug in a negative 6 into the absolute value. So 3 times negative 6 minus 1. So this time I have to do everything that's in the absolute value before I can take it. So negative 3 times 6 is negative 18 minus 1. And negative 18 minus 1 is negative 19. Now I can take the absolute value, and that gives me a positive 19. That's the answer. This next little bit, we're doing the operation. So whatever the indicated operation is. In this case, there's a couple of them. We have the addition in the middle, and we have the two multiplication issues. So we do 5 times your f function, which is 3a, plus 2 times my g function, which in this case is negative 4a plus 1. And so 5 times 3a is 15a. 2 times negative 4 is a negative 8a. 2 times 1 is a positive 2. Combine like terms gives me 7a plus 2. This is the answer. This a at the end throws off some people. All that's saying is this is the variable that we are putting it in terms of. If that happened to be an x, then I would put x's for my variable. So again, that n is just telling me what variable I'm going to use. So the directions tell me I'm adding the two functions. So I'm going to take my g function, n plus 3, and add to it my h function, which in this case is negative 2n minus 3. Again, I'm going to combine like terms. And so n minus 2n is going to be negative 1n, or just negative n. And then I take the 3 minus 3, that gives me 0. I don't technically have to write that 1 or the 0, so my final answer is just negative n. This one, the operation is multiplication. And so when we're multiplying, you either have to use FOIL or you have to use the box. And if we are multiplying two things, that means we're going on the outside end of that box. So negative 4x minus 5, x cubed minus 2. And then I'll just take and do the multiplication. So that's going to be negative 4x to the 4th. Negative 4 times negative 2 is going to be a positive 8. And I just have 1x. Now I'm going to do the next column. X cubed times negative 5 is going to be negative 5x cubed. Negative 5 times negative 2 gives me a positive 10. And then I just write them down for my answer. So that's going to be negative 4x to the 4th minus 5x cubed plus 8x plus 10. That whole thing is my answer. Now, if you have this and you have some of the terms like reverse, maybe you put this one first instead of that one, it's the same thing. This is the best form because the exponents are decreasing, but it's not the only way you could have given me the answer. Again, this was just telling me that all my variables should have been an x. This is one of the problems where we'll go into more detail of how you actually work through solving these this next semester. But for right now, all that we know is we need to divide these two functions. So that means I can go ahead and drop my division bar. It says g needs to be my numerator, so 2x plus 2. My denominator needs to be negative 4x minus 1. This one tells me I'm adding my two functions, so I know I need to add them. So I'm going to take my first function, which was t plus 3, and I'm going to take my second function, which is t cubed plus t, and then look for any like terms. The only like term I have is just my solid t's, so everything else just gets written down. So t cubed, and I have t plus t, which is 2t plus 3. That's your answer. This time I'm subtracting. And I always recommend that take care of your subtraction first. So we're going to take and change all the signs here and then make it a plus. And so if I change all the signs, that would make this a negative and that a positive. And then I just have to add 3n plus 1 plus a negative n cubed plus 3n. And so I only have that 1n cubed. My 3n plus 3n gives me 6n plus 1. Again, this n was just telling me that it needs to be in terms of n. That means the variable needs to be n. The next set is all giving me a number. So I'm plugging a number in to the g function, and then whatever I get from that, I'm plugging into the h function. So my g function is 2 times my variable plus 3, and in this case my variable is at negative 10. So 2 times negative 10 gives me a negative 20, plus 3 gives me a negative 17. Now I'm going to take this function and it goes into my h. So my h function is t plus 1. So what that means is my input plus 1, and that input is that negative 17. So my final answer is negative 16. This is my answer. Let's do this again. Same idea, but this time the function is just one of the functions. So I'm going to plug that 8 into the h function. So negative 8 plus 1, which gives me a negative 7. That number gets plugged in again to the function. So a negative, my input, plus 1. And so my input was that 7. So a negative 7 and I take the negative of it, gives me a positive 7 plus 1, which is 8, and that's your answer. So in this one, plug in a 1 into the g, and then whatever we get from that is going to go back into the function again. So my input minus 2 is the function. So 1 minus 2 gives me a negative 1. That number goes back into the g function, so that's the input minus 2. So that input is negative 1. Negative 1 minus 2 is going to give me a negative 3. There's your answer. So in this one, we take the negative 4 and we're plugging into the h. So the h function is negative 2 times my input plus 4. So my input was at negative 4. Negative 2 times negative 4 is positive 8 plus 4, which gives me a 12. That 12 goes back into the g function. And the g function says that a negative of my input minus 4. So a negative 12 minus 4, which gives me a negative 16. And that's your answer.